Club football is back and it's time to get a Fulham fans' perspective ahead of the game at Craven Cottage on Saturday. I'm pleased to be joined by Jack. Could you please kick us off with how you feel your season's gone so far? 4 games in, including the cup competition. You happy with what Marco Silva's team's doing?
Reasonably happy. I think when you look at the fixtures on paper and you look at 2 newly promoted teams in the first 3 games, plus Man United away, and then we had the cup game against Birmingham, you thought, okay, I genuinely thought we could actually start the season pretty well. I don't think Man United are all that. And on the night, they got the job done just about. We played fairly well. And then you play Leicester at home and you think, okay, we need to win this one. And we did. We got over the line with a better team. However, when we went to Ipswich, it was just like, on paper, this is a game we should win, but you have to respect the opposition. You have to respect the context behind it as well. Ipswich had basically played City and Liverpool in the opening 2 games. And the first game where they felt that they could get something from a game of Premier League football, and they really took it to us and got an early goal, made it very difficult for us. So reasonably happy with the start, but big games coming up.
So decent points haul so far, in team performance overall pretty solid as well.
Yeah, I mean, we've played the same 11 in all 3 league games so far, which is interesting. And obviously we've now got signings who have just joined, who we need to bed in, the likes of Joachim Andersen, the like of Sander Berger. So maybe over this international break, we'll see an incorporation of those players coming into the lineup, and actually we'll see a better idea of how the team will look throughout the whole season. But I have to say, the performance levels have been okay. I think there's definitely improvement needed, and I think there will be an improvement for sure. It's the start of the season. Sometimes, with pre-season, you only play about 5 or 6 games of pre-season. It does take time to get up to speed, and the expectation at Fulham is much higher than it used to be now, because we're now quite an established Premier League side. So I'm fairly content with the start. 4 points from 3.
You mentioned your summer transfer business there. Quite a busy one for Fulham. A few players leaving, only 2 for transfer fees, but the likes of Reid and Tim Ream also departing, a few players coming in. Are you happy with the transfer business your club's done?
Yes, I think I'm fairly okay with it. Deadline day was the only sort of disappointment of losing Jay Stansfield. However, the fee is just ridiculous. Like, honestly, with the add-ons and what it could rise to, it's just astronomical. So we replaced the players we needed to replace. Losing Paulinho was a massive blow, but it didn't feel like it was a big surprise. It took a while to replace Paulinho, and I don't necessarily think that Sander Berger is of his ilk, of Paulinho's ilk. However, we've got a player in Sasha Lukic who's been here for a couple of years, and he's coming on leaps and bounds and getting way better on the pitch as well. So we're a solid team. And obviously signing Emile Smith-Rowe is the marquee signing. And look, I mean, that's a signing that I'd expect a team like West Ham to make. Do you know what I mean? It's the sort of pull that I thought West Ham could make if push came to shove. If Lucas Paquetá was not allowed to play, let's just say, you would imagine that, I don't know, due to transfer policy, but the profile of player of Emile Smith-Rowe would be I would expect West Ham to be in the conversation. But it seemed it was just Palace and Fulham, and obviously we won the race as well. But yeah, deadline day was a bit of a weird one, because we wanted Ernest Nuema from Lyon. He then came out that he had a medical and didn't want to go. He felt he was being pushed out the club. And then we ended up getting in Reece Nelson, who was linked with West Ham as well. I actually have a very good friend of mine, West Ham fan, very good friend, who's going to the game on Saturday. And he sent me some information from ex-West Ham employee about Reece Nelson on deadline day, saying that Fulham and West Ham were interested, and sort of developed that he was going to Ipswich, and then he went to Fulham, and then we played Ipswich the next day. So it was quite fun. But yeah, apart from deadline day, losing Stansfield's disappointing. A good window, I think, yes.
If you had to give a score out of 10, don't worry. I know it's hard because you can only really rate the window perhaps towards the end of the season with hindsight. But at the minute, just for a little bit of fun, but also context for West Ham fans, where he's sitting, 10 is incredibly happy, couldn't be better, 0 disaster, complete rubbish. Where are you on that scale?
I think it has to be a 7 for me. It would have been an 8 if we'd have kept on to Stansfield. And I think there is now a worry, because Stansfield is a striker predominantly. We've now lost him, and we've got 2 strikers who are first teamers in Rodrigo Muniz and Raul Jimenez. Carlos Vinicius didn't get given a squad number for the season. And suddenly, when Stansfield left, we were like, okay, we can't sell Vinicius now. He's got to be backup for the backup. I don't really know what's going to happen. So when the press conference happens on Friday, that's the question I'm going to pose to Marco. Like, what's going on with Vinicius? We got rid of the players we should have got rid of. And we got in some players who I think will transform the team. I mean, signing the likes of Joachim Andersen from Crystal Palace, taking a player of that level of talent from another Premier League rival is huge. So I'm really pleased with the business we've done. Smart business. We look a tidy outfit. We just need to get going, basically.
Are you, I think this is my opinion as a neutral, you've alluded to the lack of strikers there. Are you worried about that striker? Because I think you've got a really good team. I think your defence is really good. Your midfield's really strong. And I think you've got depth in quite a few positions as well now. And I know Muniz was good last season, had a purple patch, one player of the month and stuff. However, I require more evidence than that. Before I think, really good striker. And Jimenez did it at Wolves. I don't think he's done it at Fulham yet. I find he's been quite underwhelming. And now there's an obvious reason as to why that is. It's not necessarily a criticism of him. But I just feel that that's one area of the pitch you're quite light in. Whereas other teams, I think, have almost got guaranteed goals from their striker. I don't know if I can say that about Fulham. And I was surprised. I know you were linked to some strikers like Broja in particular.
Yeah.
And I know Stansfield went on deadline day, but I still feel like I was a bit surprised that he didn't make a move for someone quite substantial, actually, to fill that striker role.
I think that's the feeling amongst the fan base right now, especially, the show we do on Fulhamish. That was the main topic of our last video. Is there enough goals in those two strikers? What I will say is that last season we were in basically the same position. We had Carlos Vinicius and Raul Jimenez, and Rodrigo Muniz was like third choice.
Yeah,
and it took for Raul Jimenez to score a very, very irrelevant consolation goal at Aston Villa for him to get his confidence up and start scoring. He scored against West Ham. And he scored a couple against Forest in that back-to-back 5-0 wins. And then the same happened for Rodrigo Muniz when push came to shove and he had to start the game. And we brought in Armando Broja on loan, and Broja just couldn't get a look in because Muniz was so good. And like I say, Muniz scored 1, and that became 2, then 3, and etc. etc. I would like to think that Jimenez scored a penalty against Birmingham in the Carabao Cup, but I'd like to think that will give him the confidence. Or even, on Saturday, if we get a goal through Muniz or through Jimenez, hopefully that kicks them on. They are capable at this level because we've seen it before. It's just about getting that first one, the monkey off the back, to get him going. However, I will say that there are goals all around the pitch. Iwobi, Smith Rowe, Pereira, Adama, these players are capable of scoring. Plenty of goals for Fulham. And, that's where, for the majority of the first half of the season, last season, that's where our goals came from, just all around the pitch. So I know what you mean. I get your point, and I agree with it completely. But strikers feed off confidence. One goal could trigger something quite special.
Good answer. Don't disagree with what you've just said either. About 5 minutes ago, you referred to expectations at Fulham have risen. I'm intrigued by what you're going to say here. What are your expectations for Fulham? Come May, what are you expecting to witness from your team?
See, I mean, I'm one of those fans who, because we've been so up and down recently, I'm okay to just be a mid-table Premier League team for a few seasons. Just consolidate, Yes, of course, we were in positions in the last couple of years where we've been in and around European places, and that's obviously incredibly exciting. You've got a team like West Ham who won the Conference League, who went to all these places, played Fiorentina in the final and won in the last minute. An amazing moment, and I was lucky enough to go to a few of those games on the way, covering it as a journalist, and it is amazing. And Fulham have been there before. However, you've got to sort of look around you. The competition in the Premier League is as rife as it has ever been. It is as competitive as it's ever been. So for a team like Fulham, who have a very good manager in Marco Silva, 3 seasons in a row to finish, let's say, 10th a couple of seasons ago, 12th last season, 13th last season, and let's say we finish 11th this season. Fine by me. Other fans of the club might have bigger ambitions, but then again, Carabao Cup semi-final last season. I don't think there's too much to complain about right now, but I think Fulham fans want to see progression, albeit maybe a top half finish, a cup run, because it is difficult to be like, I think we should be getting Europe now. Well, what about Newcastle? What about Brighton? What about West Ham? What about Villa? What about Wolves? I mean, maybe. It's just one of those things where you have to understand that those positions are very difficult to achieve. And with the squad that we've got, yeah, maybe we could do it, but I wouldn't be disappointed if we just don't do it. However, in the coming years, if we're still Premier League, that is something to look forward to. That's something to aim for.
Yeah, I know you'd obviously had Paulinho leave for big money and Stansfield left for big money as well for who he is. But I think being in the Premier League for a certain period of time allows you to go spend that money on the likes of Smith Rowe as well and start spending 25 million, because when you come up, I think there's understandable reservations over splashing the cash on big players, because if you get relegated, you've got a problem on your hands pretty quickly. But once you've been in the Premier League and you can increase your confidence that you're not going to be in a relegation battle, you can then start bringing in big players on bigger wages, because that's why I think you got Anderson in the end, because you were able to offer him that big contract that Crystal Palace were perhaps reluctant to do so. But you can offer him that because you are now a solid Premier League team, whereas a few seasons ago you perhaps couldn't have done it in case you got relegated. I don't think it's a bad position to be in. I've got one more question for you, Jack, before we move on to my team. But before we do that, I just want to point you in the direction of Jack's social media. He's a contributor to the Fulhamish podcast and has his own Patreon where he covers Fulham on a daily basis. All the links to Jack's social media are in the description below. So if you're interested in seeing and hearing more from Jack, you know where to go to find out. But we've been speaking about on the pitch. I want to talk about off the pitch at Fulham, because last season I asked Dan about the ticketing protests that he had ongoing, that Fulham fans were essentially being priced out of going to Fulham games. This season, and it's quite recent, you've got one hell of a dodgy sponsor. What's going on with Fulham off the pitch at the minute? Is everybody happy with the running of the club with the sponsorship, the ticketing? Has that died down, or is there still quite a sense of unhappiness among the fan base?
For sure, what has come out in the last week or so has been incredibly alarming. I actually myself, just because I want to keep my relationship very tidy with the club, I haven't covered it as such. I haven't spoke about it as such, but I have read about it. So I'm probably not the best person to comment on this. However, I've seen it. I'm aware that it's obviously incredibly dodgy, and it's not the first time this has happened. It's not even the first Premier League club that's done anything like this. I mean, you know, there's certain companies that certain clubs have got sponsorship from or had a partnership with, and it's been you basically looked under the rock and you found a whole load of mess.
Yeah, Crystal Palace, I'll say it. Crystal Palace is one of them as well, with their shirt sponsorship and stuff.
It's a tricky one, and it obviously, you know, it's got nothing to do with Marco Silva. It's got nothing to do with the playing squad, and that's obviously what I focus on. But
yeah,
of course, questions need to be asked about why this was done, how this was done, what did we gain from it. And you know, people are clever. People look under the surface. People want to investigate these sort of things because there's always going to be a story there. Personally, I don't think it's right. Obviously, it's not right. But hopefully, after, you know, sometimes you do see these things where there'll be a backlash and then the club will come out and say, we've pulled the plug on the deal, blah, blah. Hopefully that happens. But yeah, there was one or two like very interesting threads on it, and I read it and I thought, the more I went down, I went, oh, what are you doing here? But that's obviously down to decisions from the people higher up at the club. And like I say, it hopefully doesn't undermine Marco Silva and the work he's done at the club so far, because he's been terrific.
Yeah, I don't think it does personally. I try and keep an eye on what's going on at all Premier League clubs. It's difficult to do outside the Premier League, so I focus on the other 19 teams. And when I saw the sponsors thing come out about Fulham, I thought, well, this is definitely a little bit weird. And I've always been intrigued by these sponsorships after learning as to why certain people sponsor Premier League clubs when it doesn't appeal to the United Kingdom market whatsoever. None of us have got any interest in it whatsoever. And I remember reading about it and I thought it was quite interesting. So when the Fulham one come out, and I was like, what on earth is this? And the more you read, the more you get, I say worried. I don't, because I'm not a Fulham fan. But the more I think, if I was a Fulham fan, I'd be really concerned about this as to why. And we know why. It's money is the best offer on the table. But it's not. Put it this way, it makes West Ham got Betway, by no means a company of integrity, but it makes West Ham look squeaky clean when we've only got Betway. It's a bit like, woof. I'm glad we've got one of the mainstream bookies in the UK. But an interesting one for those that don't know what I'm referring to, just Google it, Fulham shirt sponsorship, and there's lots of information out there as well. But put it this way, LinkedIn employees of this company are fake. If you Google reverse image, the image of the employee, it's just a stock photo on Google. So it's strange. I think there's more to come of it as well. But from your club to my club, Jack, what do you make of West Ham?
I like West Ham a lot. Obviously, like I say, I've covered them. I've covered some fantastic West Ham games. They beat Manchester City in the League Cup on penalties. That was fun. They've beaten Chelsea twice. I've been there. Masuaku's winner and a 3-1 win last season. Was that season before?
Yeah.
Yes. I love doing West Ham. I think the Olympic Stadium, London Stadium, I know it's not the Boleyn, and I love the Boleyn, but it's a good place to watch a game of football from a journalistic point of view. I think you get a very good view of the pitch, albeit a million miles away, but it's fine. What do I think of West Ham? Well, I went to see the Bournemouth game. My friend had a spare, and I went to the Bournemouth game with him, and I was fairly underwhelmed by the performance. I thought Bournemouth were the better team, but West Ham just about got away with it. Was it offside? Maybe. Was it a handball? Probably. However, no VAR, so it's fine. We move on. Although I was disappointed to see you got Liverpool away because that's a very tricky tie. I'm excited to see West Ham because I'm a massive fan of players like Paquetá and Kudos, Jared Bowen. I just love the way West Ham play. And Lopetegui, transitioning from Moyes to Lopetegui, I'm expecting to see a little bit more razzmatazz, a little bit more flowing football. I do think that the likes of, from what I hear, that like Souček is a bit of a scapegoat amongst the fan base. Is that fair to say? Or at least, now you've got Rodriguez in, now you've got Alvarez, that two midfielder working very well. But you have to say, Souček, I still think is a fantastic contributor to goals. He scores a lot of goals and goes under the radar. Yes, he missed a big chance against Villa on the opening day, and that was disappointing in the final stages. But he scored against Crystal Palace. And I love Souček because he has this celebration where he does a couple of spins. And it's really fun to see. Really impressed with West Ham. Really impressed with Aaron Wan-Bissaka. He was the best player on the pitch against Bournemouth, in my personal opinion. Got up and down really well. And, when you sign a player like Wan-Bissaka, you think, he's come from United. His stock is a little bit lower than it was when he was at Palace. But no, it takes a team like West Ham to pick him up off the floor because Man United is a club that's pretty toxic and, the fans are going to get on your back. And he started fairly well at West Ham, so I'm excited about him. Obviously, I want Fulham to win on Saturday. And if we won 5-0 again, great. But I like West Ham. I keep an eye out for them because, like I say, my best friend supports them. And I've been very lucky to cover them. I'll ask David Moyes questions. And my favourite ever West Ham goal I've seen live was against Ghent in the Europa League, where Declan Rice took the ball from his own half, ran all the way and scored. I basically celebrated that goal because I just thought, what a goal that was. But fantastic. Love West Ham.
I'm going to go off my script here for 1 minute because you said you enjoyed asking David Moyes questions. What was he like as not necessarily a former manager, just in press conferences with the journalist team in front of him? Because obviously you'll have an opinion of managers away from what people like I see on the screen.
Yeah.
So what was your opinion of David Moyes?
The one negative I'll say, and I think it's completely understandable, is that when we found out that Rice was going to go, it seemed inevitable. All the questions, every press conference was about Declan Rice. And I could just tell he was getting tired of answering those questions. I was told by my bosses, can you ask about Declan Rice? I thought, okay, really? It's going to be hard, but okay. And he gave me a bit of a cold stare and he gave me a bit of a shit answer because, excuse my language, sorry. He gave me a bad answer because he's probably tired of talking. He was tired of talking about it. Apart from that, I didn't cover every West Ham game, but usually when I cover West Ham, they win. And he's always very bubbly after the game. He has a bit of patter, a bit of banter with the West Ham journalist, Roshane Thomas, who's very, very good for The Athletic. He always has a good relationship with him and other journalists as well. So, I've always found him to be very pleasurable. I've never really, I'd like to ask him a difficult question, but, as a journalist, you need to ask difficult questions. Pre-match, he's fairly like he gets excited about the fact that West Ham are in Europe and he gets to go away from home and he gets to like manage a team in a different country. And he'll be, I mean, you just saw his reaction when he won the Conference League, running on the pitch. Like, that must have meant the world to him, because I think Moyes was so underappreciated at West Ham. I thought it was quite unfair at times. He won the Conference League. He did wonders with a club. He kept them in the Premier League on the first stint when they were struggling. Came back and look what he did. And he left with his head held high, which was good. I'm glad that the relationship didn't end badly or toxic. And I know obviously we beat them the back end of last season. That was a bit of a bad day for West Ham, but by and large, it was a good ending for David Moyes, and I wish him well for the future.
Would you have him at Fulham?
No, I would have Marco Silva at Fulham.
Case closed. But moving back to the script then, whom shall finish higher, West Ham or Fulham?
Oh, I would say, I mean, I look at that squad of West Ham and I just think that's an incredibly good squad. Max Kilman, Mavropanos, Todibo, like some really good options at the back. Soufal, Emerson, Wan-Bissaka, like I say, Rodriguez. I mean, I'm not going to name every player, but you get my point. Great squad with great depth. But obviously Fulham, have a good squad as well. I think, hand on heart, I have to be honest and say I think West Ham should finish above Fulham. Doesn't necessarily mean they will finish above Fulham. West Ham, we saw it last season. They had a good squad, but they put in the odd dodgy performance. I mean, losing 5-0 to Fulham, albeit there was a sickness bug, apparently. I think that, like I say, West Ham should finish above Fulham. That doesn't necessarily mean they will finish above Fulham. So we'll leave it at that.
Let's turn our attentions to Saturday then. How do you see this game going? And can you get your crystal ball out, please, and give us a score prediction?
Yeah, crystal ball is coming out. I've had this in my mind for a couple of weeks, the score prediction. I'm going to go with 1-1, first of all. I think West Ham will take the lead and Fulham will equalise in the first half, and it will be a bit of a cagey second half, and it will be a point. Maybe it's similar to Ipswich game. But this is interesting because West Ham, obviously, like I just said, they came to Craven Cottage with a sickness bug, and they weren't playing their full strength team. I think Pablo Fornal started and had a terrible game. Bowen was playing as the number 9 because he was playing in that position from time to time. I've heard that Fulkrug is injured, which is obviously a bit of a blow for West Ham. So Antonio might lead the line. It might be Bowen. I mean, I looked at the lineup against Manchester City, and if you line up similar to that with Rodriguez and Alvarez and then Paqueta, Bowen, Kudos, and Antonio, I think that's an extremely dangerous team, and I am fearful. I fear it. With obviously a very good back four as well, and Areola in goal. Did Areola come off injured at halftime against?
He did, but he did also go to join up with the French squad. So he didn't play, but he was with the French squad, which would insinuate it's nothing too serious. Otherwise, he wouldn't be away on international duty.
Okay, that's okay. So Areola should start in goal. Always liked Areola because he had a loan spell at Fulham. How do I see this one going? My main takeaway from the Man City game, albeit West Ham lost, they were insanely dangerous on the counter-attack. That's how the goal came about. That's how Kudos hit the post. So I'm fearful that Fulham in fact, West Ham may be happy with Fulham just to have the majority of the ball and then spring a counter on them. I mean, Kudos is quick. Bowen is quick. And, Bowen's up against Robinson. Robinson's recovery pace is, almost like Carl Walker's. It's that good. So I'm looking forward to that battle. Tete up against Kudos will be interesting. I think Kudos probably will get the better of him. Paqueta, will he get a yellow card? Will he not? Who knows? But I think that he's an insanely talented player. And if you've got, do you play Rodriguez and Alvarez? Is it like a 3 in midfield, or is it 2?
We don't really know yet, to be honest with you, because we only did it against Manchester City, and it was. I mean, I've classed it as a 4-2-3-1. It felt more like a 4-3-3, but certainly wasn't a flat midfield 3. But in the second half, Alvarez dropped in between the two centre-backs and it formed a back 3. And Paqueta sort of dropped in alongside Rodriguez, and that allowed Kudus to come a bit more narrow compared to the first half. Because the way Man City played, Rico Lewis, as we know, isn't a right back. He's there as a right back on paper and on the lineups, but he comes in and plays central midfield, and that was causing us bother in the first half. and Kudus was sort of like not really marking anyone. So second half, he came in field. He was picking up Rico Lewis a bit more, but it also meant that when we could spring counter-attacks, Kudus was much closer to Jared Bowen and Mikel Antonio and was 10, 15 yards off the touchline compared to the first half. So it's difficult. We don't really have enough evidence to suggest as to what the plan is, but I guess on paper, not necessarily how it gets played, it'll be more of a 4-2-3-1 with Rodriguez and Alvarez next to each other and Paqueta. Like a free roll, I guess. In pre-season, the final pre-season game we played at London Stadium, Paqueta had a bit of a free roll in that game, and he looked good, but he hasn't looked good in the competitive fixtures yet. So I don't know what that situation is, but he got an assist for Brazil during the international break, so I'm hoping we can start to see the best of him, because I miss him when he's there on the pitch, but when we don't have the best Paqueta, I do miss that Paqueta. So I'm hoping he can come back.
That's interesting. It's interesting because they have wing backs. If you go to a back three and have the wing backs in Wan-Bissaka and Emerson, it adds a little bit more width, and then players like Paqueta can move more central. Kudus could move more central to receive the ball as well. And obviously, Antonio is an out-and-out striker, but he can drift wide and he can stretch defenses, and then Bowen can come inside as the centre forward. So Fulham are going to watch out for the transitional changes between those front forward players. But then again, West Ham also have to do the same thing. Iwobi, Smith Rowe, Pereira, if he plays as the 8, and then Adama with Muniz, those 4 behind the striker are also going to interchange. Pereira could drop wide, Smith Rowe could drop wide, and suddenly you've got to have your wits about you. So I think it's going to be a very intriguing game where there's going to be a lot of attacking flair on the pitch. It's just about who can take those chances. People say where's the game going to be won and lost, and people say the midfield. I actually think it's going to be the attacking areas because of that quality. So, and I'm very confident with the defense that Fulham have now. I think Issa Diop, former West Ham player, of course, might come out the team for Joachim Andersen. It feels like you spend all this money on Andersen, you're going to bring him in at some point, and Diop had 2 very good games and then not so good against Ipswich. So I do think this is Joachim Andersen's time. That as a back 2 or 2 centre-back pairing is very exciting with Bassi. Robinson Tete loves to get forward. Like I say, good recovery pace to get back, good one-on-one defending as well, and a very capable keeper in Bernd Leno. This is a great fixture, a really good fixture. And the teams on paper, I think this is why it's going to be a draw. We might just cancel each other out. Jared Bowen goal, Smith Rowe goal. That's that. We'll take a point.
Yeah, but for what Jack doesn't know, and some of you subscribers may not know this either, myself and Gonzo recorded our version of the match preview earlier, just before doing this. And we also both went for 1-1. So all 3 of us have gone for a 1-1 draw on this. And all 3 of us insinuated it's tough to call. We don't know what West Ham are going to do, but it would be a good point for us as well. So there you go, 1-1. It's happening. All 3 of us are predicting 1-1 draws. But listen, Jack, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. I've really enjoyed listening to that one, actually. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
If you guys at home have enjoyed this video, please do drop a like on the video by clicking thumbs up. Subscribe if you're new to Hammers Chat. And if you want to see and hear more from Jack, do check out his social media. All the links are in the description below. And I'll catch you in a bit.